So it's been about 20 minutes and our dough has risen a lot. You can check out the bowl, see how it's all the way to the top. I usually don't let my dough get this out of hand, just until it fills up the bowl pretty much, or doubles in size. Because when I try to remove it, do you see how it's nice and sticky? Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to take my finger and again, because the dough is, you know, good at sticking to itself, I just kind of use the dough to help wipe off the dough and get this out of the way. Okay. Now, it helps to get some flour on your fingertips so that it doesn't stick as much to you. So I like to kind of dip my hand in my flour bucket, and I've got a cutting board for this next step. And I'm going to just sprinkle the flour just a little bit and kind of rub it into the end. Okay, and I sprinkle the top of my dough with the flour and I punch it down. What this is gonna do is it's gonna release any extra air, okay, so that it's easier to pull out. And then I'm gonna just scoop it. Again, with my hand, I'm just gonna scoop it. And do you see how it pulls away really easily from the bowl? Just like that, nice and clean. Okay, so I'm gonna take the whole mound of dough and get it out onto my cutting board. Okay, so this is the size that I'm working with, and I just kind of flip it over a couple times so that it gets a little bit of a coating of flour, just so that it's not so sticky. Now my loaf pans are prepared. I've buttered all 4 of them, and I am ready to divide up and shape my loaves. Now a lot of recipes will have you roll out your dough and then roll it in, and I find that that method is not very efficient or fun for me, and it creates a lot of pockets of air, at least the way that I've seen it done. So I've got my loaf and I kind of spread it out in a way where I can easily see where half is, right? So about there. And I'm going to cut it with a knife, a little bread knife. I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to separate those 2 things, okay? And then I'm gonna cut each half in half again, okay? So that's how I divide it up. Pretty easy, division. Now what I do to shape the loaves is really pretty simple, and it's quick, and it's always worked for me. I very rarely get any gaping holes in my dough. So I'll hold the loaf with both hands, and on the top, I'm gonna pull it. Do you see how I'm doing that? And I tuck my fingers underneath, okay? And I just kind of pull, and then I curl those outside edges under. Okay, so I stretch out the tops, and then I tuck. I just tuck. So the top of it is gonna be this nice smooth surface. The bottom of it doesn't look so great. But the thing is, what I find is that then when I put it, as I stretch it, I'm popping bubbles as I go. Okay, so I stretch it and I pop and I tuck it under. And then ugly side down into the pan, smooth side up. As this rises in the pan, those bubbles in the bottom are going to fill in. The important thing is that we've popped all the bubbles within the loaf, and so that part is there, and it's gonna rise up nice and smooth, and then that's just gonna fill in the spaces. Again, I take my loaf and I just kind of tuck under. See that? And as I'm tucking, I'm stretching and smoothing out the top. Okay, so I do this to all 4. And now if I find that if I set it in and I see any bubbles that I may have missed, I'll just pinch the top a little bit. And when this rises again, it's gonna smooth out that pinch mark. So no big deal. Again, curl, 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 curl. It's really simple. It goes super fast, and I don't have to get out my rolling pin. I like it. Now as I do this, sometimes you can hear the bubbles pop, and that's a nice little satisfying sound. All right, last one here. That's all I do. Okay, it doesn't look too pretty in the bottom, but again, I don't really get any huge bubbles. All right. Okay, pop a couple of those on the top. Now I've got all 4 of my loaves ready to go, and we're gonna let it rise one more time for another 20 minutes. So I'm gonna cover it with a towel. Sometimes I like to place it on my stovetop where it's nice and warm. And yeah, it'll rise again to about, not all the way to the top of the loaf pan, but close to. And when it gets in the oven, it's gonna complete its rising. At this time, like when I'm letting my bread rise, I'll do something that takes a little less time in between while I'm waiting so that I keep myself in the kitchen and I can be really efficient. So I'll whip out a batch of granola bars or Rice Krispie treats or cookie dough or something that's really quick that only takes a few minutes. So we'll let this rise and we'll come back when it's all ready to go in the oven. All right, we're back. It's been about 15-20 minutes. Our loaves have risen again, so they're just above the pan or right at, but they're nice and rounded out and ready to go in the oven. We set the oven to 350 degrees, and we're gonna bake these for just 30 minutes, and we're not gonna drop the hot pan. Okay, so as most standard ovens are going to be able to fit all 4 loaf pans, and I just put 2 long ways in the back like this, and then the other 2 just in the front. And they fit like so. All right, so we're gonna bake them for 30 minutes, and then I'll show you some fun tips on how I finish them. All right, 30 minutes has passed. The timer has gone off. It is time to get the bread out. Okay, so here we have this nice golden brown loaf, and I just take them out and get them on my stove top. Ooh, one more. All right, now, here's a little secret that I love to incorporate. Are you ready for this? Butter. Fresh out of the oven, I like to take my stick of butter and just paint over the top. I just rub the butter on top of my bread until it's nice and glistening and shiny. See that?
Yes.
It gives it a really nice flavor. It keeps the crust moist. All right, so I'm gonna let these cool for just a little while. If I let them cool in the loaf pan, it's going to have a softer crust. If I take them out and cool them on a cooling rack, then depending on how long I leave it out, it could leave a crustier crust. So depending on what you like, you can do whatever. Right, we did it. We finished our bread, we let it cool, and we've got this gorgeous loaf. Okay, now, the final step is to cut and bag it. I like to cut my bread after I make it, and then I stick it in a bag and freeze it. It freezes really, really well. And that way, when I cut it before I freeze it, then when I take it out of the freezer, it's already sliced. I don't need to wait for it to thaw in order to prep it. It just helps save me some time in the end. So I like to use Winco's brand storage bags. Gallon size storage bags are the best bags that I found. I've tried using Ziploc bags before, and they're just not quite the right shape. But these Winco bags are a little bit longer and narrower than Ziploc bags, and so it fits the bread really, really well. And they have a twist tie to it, which I don't really mind because store-bought bread has that too. All right, but before we put it in the bag, we're going to cut it up. Everybody always asks me how I get my bread sliced so perfectly, and here's my secret: electric knife. It's one of my favorite kitchen power tools ever. It has a safety. It's like a legit power tool. Anyway, so I just, when you use an electric knife, you just pull the trigger and the blades will move. And you don't have to saw at all. You just glide the knife right straight through. So I start on the end and I cut the heel off, and then I go probably an inch, not an inch, I'm sorry, like a half inch, between a quarter inch and a half inch. And I just slice, slice, slice. I like to slice it really thin because this bread is really pretty hearty and it'll fill you up. But here's about how thin I slice it. It makes for great sandwiches or toast or anything. And it's just just right. Not too much, not too little. So I'll just continue slicing the whole loaf. And this just takes practice. I have some pretty good spatial skills. So for me, I can eyeball and my slices can be pretty consistent. But for some people, that just takes practice. If you like a thicker slice, you can slice it thicker. But see how I just push that blade right down and try to keep it as straight as possible, all the way down to my cutting board. I know you all hopped on this video just so that you could see me use an electric knife. Really exciting. At least it's exciting for me. This is one of my favorite parts. Okay, now when I get to the end of the heel, if you can see, I'm just gonna use the tips of my fingers to just push that heel closer to the loaf. And that way I'm not gonna get my fingers in the way. Safety is super important. And I just cut the rest as far as I can go. Okay, once I've sliced everything, I use my hands to kind of lift up from where I started and let all those slices fall back together. And I stand it up on its end, and I take that bag again and I pull it over and just slip it on like a sock. And then I grab the heel from down below, flip it upside down, and there we have it. Twist the bag, add a twist tie, ta-da! And I can use it right away, or like I said before, I put it in the freezer. If you can see behind me, I bake 12 to 16 loaves at a time because of the size of my family. So I baked all that today while we were waiting for this to cool. And I will slice up all of these and put most of them in the freezer, just so that it keeps a little bit longer, depending on how fast you go through bread. I prefer storing it in the refrigerator, and it just lasts longer. So there you have it. There's the bread. Please feel free to give it a try. Let me know what your experience is like. Feel free to ask questions, and I would love to hear about your success stories. Yeah, can't wait to hear from you. Good luck.